Hello and welcome to episode 97 of MMO Weekly, presented as always by Chitty's Cheesesteaks. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, joined by MMO contributor Mathias Altman-Kurosaki, friend of the show. Mathias, thanks for coming on, man. Obviously, this is a very special episode. And Mets advancing in the postseason to the NLCS, beat the Phillies in 4 games. Just want to get your reaction here to what was a really, really epic series for New York.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Sal. I'm ecstatic about the way they performed this series. I think a lot of people were picking the Phillies, and I get the Phillies were the second best team in the National League by record. But for the better part of 2/3, I'd say, of the season, the Mets were the best team in baseball, and the Phillies kind of stagnated. They only went 50-48 over their last 98 games, and I think you started sensing the tides turning around that series in London. The Mets maybe had a shot to take down the Phillies. And I mean, the starters were great. I think that was across the board. I know Severino made a couple mistakes in game 2, but Manaea was great. I thought Senga, for the 2 innings he pitched, he looked really good. And Quintana was strong, 5 innings, only 1 unearned run. And they just kept getting clutch hits. Mark Vientos in games 1 and 2, Brandon Nimmo in game 2, Francisco Lindor in game 4, Starling Marte, Jose Iglesias. Seemed like everybody was really contributing. And that's, not to snub Pete Alonso, who also hit a couple home runs. So really, I thought the entire team, I'd say, aside from the bullpen, the entire team was really clicking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think the only real liability at this point Mets fans are probably scared of is that, bullpen bridging to Diaz. Even, Diaz has his up and downs. We know that. We'll get to it. But, man, overall, just this feels like a team that just does not feel out of it ever. They are confident. They're having fun. They're playing loose. They're playing behind their captain, their leader, Francisco Lindor, who just seems to be able to not do any wrong the last week and a half. He's had about 5 seasons worth of big moments in a week and a half, it feels like. I mean, David Stern said it best. There's no one in baseball at this point that you want up in big moments right now than Lindor. And that's even saying the Ohtani man they're going to see, on Sunday for the Dodgers. So that's a really big thing. Mark Vientos really, breaking out this series, I think is huge. Obviously a big year for him, but just being able to contribute, getting big hits when they need big home runs. It's really just, it seems like they're just, again, feeding off Lindor, feeding off that energy. And they're a team that's hotter than the sun right now. And I don't care who they play. I know whoever the opponent is, I am sure, whether they admit it or not, want nothing to do with this Mets team right now.
Yeah, and really, it's been a while since they've had a team like this, I feel like. In 2022, yes, they were great. They won 101 games, but you sort of sensed towards the end of the season they were starting to weaken. This time around, it feels like as they entered the postseason, they were only getting stronger, and they've really hit their stride, like I said, across the board. I feel like I can't really point to someone who hasn't really done their job on the offense. It feels like everyone's had their contribution in some way, shape, or form, whether it means at the dish or in the field. It's just been really exciting to watch this group gel.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as though really the only person I think of at times is Francisco Alvarez. He seems to really kind of be struggling at the plate. But for the most part, like you said, yeah, everyone seems to be, contributing. Jose Iglesias, we could talk about that. He looks a little like a veteran that's played
a little jumpy.
Yeah, it looks like a veteran that's played a lot of games at this point in the season.
Yeah.
A little long in the tooth. I would say probably out of everybody in that game in game 4, he probably had the worst at bats out of everyone, which is a little concerning. But and we can get to it quick. Obviously, Jeff McNeil playing in the Arizona Fall League tonight, which I'm sure we all thought of. Going to hopefully be ready for the NLCS. In what capacity, we don't know. But someone like McNeil, just their bat off the bench, lengthening things out, obviously is a huge plus. And, with like we're talking about with Iglesias here, obviously it's a presence all year that you don't want to lose. But it will be nice to have McNeil back in that lineup to maybe give him, a refresher and just, something that you could do to give a little different look, because Iglesias does seem a little tiresome at the moment. But I mean, overall, I guess it doesn't matter because this team finds somebody to find a way no matter what, right?
Yeah, and I think it'd be good for, when you face a right-handed pitcher, you can get McNeil in there. Like, for most of the second half, it was sort of a platoon between McNeil and Iglesias. And McNeil had an OPS over 900 in the second half. He was looking like the Jeff McNeil we expected him to be. So, maybe you have McNeil play against the righties and Iglesias play against the lefties. And, maybe Iglesias takes the Luis Angel Acuna role a little bit of being a defensive sub, and I think Acuna might still be on the playoff roster. Maybe they drop an arm, but I think McNeil, no matter what capacity he comes back, I think he's definitely going to be a boost.
Yeah, it has to be, right. And I do think that the Mets, I mean, we'll find out obviously sooner here than later, but I do think they're going to carry one less pitcher. I would think it would be Ottavino with the odd man out. To lose Acuna's speed and defense end of games, I think would hurt them. So I think that's good that they'll be able to carry that extra position player, like you said. So, it's really interesting to see just how they're going to line up. Obviously, talking pitching, their pitching lines up really well for this series compared to the Dodgers. I think we know that. Obviously, going to have Senga start game 1 here. But just overall, the starting pitching they got in this series between, like you said, Senga was a huge boost, pitching a couple innings in that first game. Sean Manaea, I mean, you can't say more than enough good things about him at this point. Didn't know that they had Sandy Koufax in the second half, but it's feeling that way. And for a guy, that changed arm angles, the crossbody delivery, that sort of thing, and having so much success, to see that and now pitching late into a postseason and clear ace of the staff, I don't think is, something that Met fans would have pegged in March that was going to happen.
Yeah, and the other thing was that Manaea had struggled in his previous postseason appearances. Coming into this year, he had allowed 13 earned runs in 7 2/3 innings. And it seems like this time he's ready for the bright lights. Solid outing against Milwaukee, gave 2 runs in 5 innings, but no walks. 7 strong innings against Philly. He got maybe 1 jam against, the meat of the Phillies lineup. He struck out Harper and got that line drive double play. And he was still able to go back out there for the 7th and even started the 8th inning. I've been really, really impressed. And I mean, the arm angles are great, but also the way he adds and subtracts with his fastball.
Sure.
He's a guy normally sits 92, 93, but when he needs to get a big out, he can run it up 94, 95, 96 and really blow hitters away with that stuff. And Alvarez spoke about how he started calling for the changeup more, and his changeup was really effective. So his fastball is great. His secondaries have been also really good. So I'm really excited to see what he can do against the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point just as far as him vanquishing the playoff demons. Like you said, he had a huge ERA and a couple of postseason starts in his career. Obviously seems to have put that to bed with everything he's done. Pitches at the top of the zone with that fastball so effective, like you were talking about, and the sweeper and the changeup, just everything be able to command. It's been really cool to see. As I feel like you keep saying every time, you just hope it lasts for a couple more starts at this point. That's all you're asking for. I hope seems that could be the case, but I mean, man, we're talking about pitching. Obviously, Severino, 1 bad inning in game 2 of this Philly series. Really 3 bad pitches if you want to go that route. He was, very effective outside of that. So I expect him to be a good game 2 starter there. And we have to, before we get to Edwin Diaz and all that, we have to talk about David Peterson. I mean, this man is a weapon out of the bullpen, whatever they want to do. Don't know if he's going to piggyback Senga tomorrow night, after one batter through or one time through the lineup or whatever it may be. But this is a guy who's becoming, a real weapon out of the pen. Someone that, to me, if they want to, could use like an Andrew Miller a la 2016. I kind of feel that from him now. And just, you talk about circle of trust. I think at this point, he's probably the guy you trust the most coming out of the bullpen, even more so than Diaz.
Yeah, and they finally have an effective lefty out of the bullpen. For much of the year it was Danny Young, but Danny Young really faltered in September, and that's why you haven't seen him in October yet. And Peterson has adjusted really well to being a reliever. It's not always easy to be a starter all year, and all of a sudden you're coming out of the pen. I think he got those 3 outs to end the wild card series, pitched a couple of strong innings against the Phillies in game 1, and again was effective in game 4. I think while you can't use him every single game, or you need to give him a couple days of rest, I think he's sort of the lefty version of what Jose Butto was for much of the year. And it's really been a breath of fresh air for a bullpen. Like I said earlier, I think it's been like the one weakness for this team, and he's provided some stability.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you're going to point to one thing, it's obviously the bullpen here. I think everyone holds their breath when these starters pitch 6, 7, 8 innings, and then they have to bridge it. I know every fan kind of feels the same there, but listen, every team has their flaws, right? No matter how good, bad, or the other, and it's just, good teams pick each other up in different areas, and you get guys like Peterson who step up, to bridge the gap there. And, they've done it this far now. So, at this point, the anxieties for that are understandable, but, they continue to find ways to win ball games and piece this together late, in late innings. So, you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt at this point to do it. But, talking about the bullpen, talking about the back end, obviously we got to talk about Diaz. Very hot and cold guy. Appreciate that he doesn't jump around the celebrations anymore. He's learned from all that kind of stuff and has perspective. But still very hot and cold for him, right? It seems like he's got to always put a couple of guys down before he's able to lock in his stuff. It would be nice for my heart if he didn't do that anymore, but, we'll see. But just overall, kind of your thoughts on him and how he's kind of battling through a postseason here where, I think, again, out of the manys that we talk about, if we would have said that Edwin Diaz maybe wasn't at the top of his game, folks wouldn't think they'd be able to make a run like this. But yet here we are, and he's still closing out games and clinching postseason series.
Yeah, and this is his first real extended postseason run. That's the thing. He was there in 2022, but they got knocked out in the wild card round.
Yep.
Mariners never made the postseason with him. So this is our first chance to see what can he do deep into October. And, he got 5 big outs. I think it almost gets overshadowed, but in that wild card series, he got 5 big outs against the Brewers in Game 3. Kept it a 2-run game, which allowed them to come back. And I think the issue with the Game 2 in Philly was confidence, really. He got the out of Schwarber, but I mean, it's just so many sliders. I was saying right before he gave up that triple to Bryson Stott, like, throw a fastball, please. And he threw a hanging slider and it got drilled down the line. And we saw it in Game 4 before he locked in. Again, it was, his fastballs were all over the place. His sliders weren't even close. Then he starts just attacking with the fastballs. What Jeremy Hefner said to him, just throw your fastball in the zone. You're going to blow them away. And he did blow them away. I mean, he threw his hardest pitch of the year to Kyle Schwarber to close it out. There was a fastball in the zone. I mean, he threw fastballs in the zone to Cody Clemens too. So I think confidence, and just attack the zone with him. And it's worth noting also that his home road splits are pretty stark. 1.96 ERA at home, 5.96 ERA on the road. So maybe it's the trumpets. Maybe he just needs the trumpets. But I mean, really, I think if he attacks the zone with his fastball, it'll make his slider more effective in addition to his fastball. So I'm really curious to see how he does in the NLCS. Like I said earlier, deepest he's ever pitched in October. So lights are bright. Can he come through again?
Yeah, and you really have to lock it in and throw strikes right away with guys like Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman at the top. You can't really get away with fall behind and hitters like that. So hopefully he's able to lock it in like you're talking about, and doesn't take a couple guys on every time to do so. We know he's got funky mechanics and all that, so things could be off. Like you said, this is extended for him. Deepest he's ever pitched in a season. And he's coming off. He hasn't pitched in a full season. I think now we're seeing. I think his legs are underneath him finally. Like he is comfortable in that regards. But it's still a lot of innings coming off that injury. Haven't pitched in 2 years or whatever. So hopefully he can kind of right the ship and get hot. Because if he gets hot in the ninth, then this is really a team. Even with outside of the other guys they kind of have in the pen, that's a really formidable bridge from Peterson to him. Hopefully they can figure that out. But real quick, I want to circle back to Pete Alonso. Couple of big home runs, obviously, this series. All of his home runs to right field so far this postseason, which you love to see. Still kind of a weird, I feel like, postseason for him as far as the power's there, but he hasn't done much kind of outside of that. But his presence in the lineup is still huge, and he's picked a lot of balls at first base, which I feel like kind of gets unnoticed with him. Just want to kind of get your thoughts on Alonso's postseason here so far. And, hopefully he can get even hotter now in the NLCS, which the Mets would welcome, I'm sure.
Yeah, and he has 3 homers in 6 games. 3 homers in 7 games this postseason. I mean, maybe this is finally the power surge we've been looking for all year, because it feels like outside of the 1 week in April where he hit 4 homers in a week, we haven't really seen that.
Sure.
But, he hit the 3-run homer against Williams, which I think sort of jump-started him, because before that, he was still chasing. He was still striking out in the big moments. I mean, I was saying this to Jean-Luc last week, but he was hitting 131 in late and close situations in the regular season. Now, he hit that big home run against Devin Williams. And again, it was he wasn't trying to do too much, it feels like. He got a changeup. He went the other way, like you're saying. All of his home runs have been to the opposite field. It looks like he's not necessarily trying to hit home runs, but the power is coming naturally. And like I said earlier, he's not chasing as much, and it finally looks like the moments aren't getting too big for him. sometimes he just hits a sac fly to drive in a run instead of trying to hit the ball a mile. So I'm really, really liking the way he's changed his approach. And I think there's a good reason to expect big things against the Dodgers.
Yeah, certainly that would be great. We know what Lindor's done in the clutch now this year. And, outside of, them, it would be nice to see if they could turn the wheel a little bit offensively. Next man up, next man up. It feels like some guys maybe get a little too big in certain situations. And with the Dodgers offense, you want to really be able to, take advantage as you can. Obviously, they left a small village on base in Game 4 of that series. It wasn't for Lindor. They got the leadoff man on 5 of the first 6 innings, I believe, or 5 out of 6 innings, wasn't able to capitalize. So, they can't really do that if they want to have a chance against the Dodgers. But, we'll transition now to previewing this. But, one thing I think the Mets do have in their favor is that obviously the starting pitching. I think that's a clear advantage. The Dodgers at this point probably going to run 2 bullpen games out there, within the 7-game series, which is crazy to think about. So just want to get your thoughts on, this series coming up here. Dodgers kind of pitching compared to the Mets and how you think this is going to go down.
Yeah, the Dodgers starting rotation is the biggest issue for them. I mean, without a doubt, they have a great offense, arguably the best offense in baseball. And their bullpen was fantastic against San Diego. I had a number of questions about their bullpen, but they were great in Game 1, Game 3, Game 4, and Game 5. I mean, 24 scoreless innings to end the series. And a lot of it was the bullpen because, Yoshinobu Yamamoto can't pitch a lot right now. He's coming off a major injury. Walker Buehler has not been Walker Buehler this year. Again, another guy coming off of an injury, but
Sure.
In general, he's just been getting lit up. He got lit up in Game 3 in San Diego. But my biggest question for them is, will the bullpen tire out? Because Sure. I feel like it's not necessarily sustainable to keep winning by throwing bullpen games, a few times in a 7-game series. So
Sure.
while I think there's definitely a ton of talent in that bullpen. I mean, Michael Kopech, Blake Treinen,
Right.
Alex Vesia, even former Met Anthony Banda, he's become very effective. Evan Phillips, there's a lot of hard throwers in that pen who are going to be hard to hit, but at some point they have to break. And I think the Mets beat up on one of the best bullpens in baseball in Philadelphia and another great bullpen in Milwaukee. So if the Mets can tire out the starters early, you'll get a lot of looks at that bullpen. I think that'll work in their favor.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, how many runs did they score in the 7th, 8th, and 9th in this series? It's pretty much the bulk of their stuff was off the bullpen. Hopefully that can continue, like you said, and that really does, boast in the Mets' favor. It will be interesting to see how that happens. And talk about confidence, whatever. They really feel like once starters come out of the game, it feels like they almost have a sigh of relief, breath of fresh air, somebody different to see, and they feel at that point that they're going to get back into it. It's going to be a hard team. Obviously, the Dodgers have been here many, many times before, but we also know their history, how they are in the whole postseason, and that coupled with their pitching problems, along with this Mets team just being overly confident and having fun. I don't think it matters who it is. I think this team really has a legitimate chance now to make a run into the World Series. Obviously, National League, it's a harder road to get there than the American League. We don't have to get to that. But the Mets lucked out, at least on their side of the bracket. A couple weeks ago before the postseason started, I talked with Mike about that. I said if the Mets were able to make a run, the side of the bracket that they were on is the side to do it. Obviously, they've had trouble within Milwaukee the last few years. So, we knew that was going to be a tough task. But no one wanted to see San Diego. No one wanted to see the Dodgers early in the postseason. So this has worked out, about as well as it could if you're a Met fan outside of actually going on this run. But it seems like, the stars have just aligned for them so far this last couple of weeks. And hopefully it stays like that, a couple more.
Yeah, and the thing is, you could say, the Dodgers took the season series. They won 4 of the 6 games. But the last time the Mets and Dodgers faced each other, the Mets were at rock bottom.
Sure.
That was the game, everything went haywire with Jorge Lopez throwing his glove into the stands. They called the team meeting. That was a completely different roster. Vibes-wise, talent-wise, they didn't have Jesse Winker yet. They didn't have Francisco Alvarez back. They were still running that weird catching tandem of Omar Narvaez and Tomas Nido, neither of whom are on the roster anymore.
Right.
They hadn't called up Iglesias yet, which I think is a big thing. Jeff McNeil hadn't figured it out yet. There were a lot of things that weren't going on the way they are right now. And also, Nina mentioned that back in April, which again, their one hot stretch in April was still before they really figured it all out. I think the Mets took 2 of 3 from the Dodgers in LA.
Sure.
So I think that while the Dodgers on paper are probably the far superior team, I think there's no reason why the Mets can't give them a run and can't take them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So, we're going to have to end things on that. Give me your predictions for the series.
I'm going with the Mets in 6 games, and give me NLCS MVP Brandon Nimmo. You saw how emotional he was after that clincher in Game 4. I just have a feeling he's going to go bananas this series. So give me Mets in 6, Nimmo MVP.
I like it. I got Mets in 7. I'm going to go Francisco Lindor, the MVP. I'm not really going out on a limb there, but nobody's hotter than him right now. So I'm going to keep riding him. There's a reason why his back was hurting him, because he carried this team the pretty much whole second half. So hopefully he can keep it going for a few more games here. Should be a lot of fun. Can't wait for tomorrow night. Hopefully this run keeps going, but obviously we'll catch you up with everything that goes on here. Mathias, thank you so much for coming on tonight. And as always, folks, let's go Mets. Keep the faith. 4 wins away from a pennant. Who would have thought that in May? Certainly not me. Have a great weekend, everybody.